Yo, what's up, guys? So today I'm gonna be doing a post Battle of Legends tier list for you guys because I know that the latest set introduced some really cool cards such as Assault Synchron and all that good stuff. We'll kind of have that kind of covered here, but I kind of want to just give you a quick update on the tier list. I believe after the SAWCQ, which is the South American World Championship qualifier, we have Kashira winning that tournament, and we have Exorcister winning the North America Remote Duel tournament. And so like these two events I feel like are really good stops in time for us to kind of reevaluate the meta and the tier list based on where decks are currently positioned and where they're standing. So let's kind of take a look at the tier maker I have here. Shout out to Goob here for making this for me, but I decided to put all these decks in the list already and kind of just have it be a discussion base format. But before we continue to the rest of the video, don't forget to subscribe as well as check out the latest merch at goocast.com and pick up your See the Lines sweatshirt and hoodie if you haven't already. But let's start off with I guess before I start into like the tier list, I kind of want to explain the tiers I have right here. So we have tier 1, which is meta, highly represented. Okay, so this is a deck that I believe is going to be highly represented. As well as power level wise strongest. Okay, so to kind of like back up my point, I'll give an example with the North American Remote Duel. Kashira represented about 30% of the top 32 players. It's quite a huge, quite a huge number. So and Runic Furhire was also pretty much up there as well, about 20%, 28%. So high representation is what I'm kind of looking for when I say tier 1. And then tier 2 are decks that I think are actually pretty good, but I don't think they'll have representation or as much representation as tier 1, right? So when I talk about tiers, I talk about like I want to kind of focus on like representation because these are like the decks that you're more likely to you'll face throughout the tournament at a 12-round YCS, if that makes sense. But they might not be the most represented deck in your 12-round experience. So like you might catch 1 or 2 in the tier 2 category. Probably around like 2 players will play the tier 2 deck out of your 12-round experience. I would say 4 players will play 4 to 6 players will play the tier 1 decks out of a 12-round experience, and then you'll have like some rogue decks here and there, right? And then tier 3 are like basically decks you might see early rounds of a YCS, early rounds of nationals. They're kind of like rogue options, so you might see them one time here and there, and so representation they're not really there at all compared to tier 2. Power level is a little bit weaker than the other decks in tier 1 and tier 2 as well. But yeah. The last tier is the cancel your flight to the tournament. Do not show up if you're playing these decks. Obviously I'm joking, but I think these are like they were in like the categories, so I decided to just throw them on there. I just don't think they're that good. I think there's better options for those decks, or I think like the balance just kind of like nuked them. So now let's go with let's start off with now like the deck list in each of the tiers, right? So for tier 1, like I said, these are decks that you're gonna see in Top Cut. These are decks that you will most likely play 3 ofs, 2 ofs, 4 ofs in your Swiss rounds, and these are the decks that are positioned to quote unquote win the tournament. Okay, so we have Runic Furhire, Runic Sprite Furhire, and then we have Runic Live Twin Sprite. I'm gonna put those 2 in the same discussion because I think that any sort of Runic deck at the moment is super overtuned. I think Runic as an engine is super unbalanced, and the fact that it gives you infinite card advantage while having the added bonus of like destroying your opponent's deck off its mulligan effect is just ridiculous. So I just think Runic cards in general are just like super overtuned. They're super not balanced. Like you see in Master Duel, they hit that stuff like so many times. But it's just that right now the Runic cards are really, really powerful. And with the combined with Sprite cards, it's just like kind of insane. Labyrinth. So there's 2 versions of Labyrinth that have been going around, as you know. One version is the furniture version, utilizing the Storby Torbies, the Chandeliers of the world. And the other version utilizes more floods, more trap cards. Kind of similar to how Dinka Bowie, I guess, played his deck, right? I believe based on the feature matches we saw, Dinka Bowie, who won the latest German Nationals with over 2,000 participants, was more focused on more traps. So both versions are quite strong. I think the furniture version kind of has like a advantage in the pure trap version. But you know, Labyrinth is very powerful. Its resource recursion is really strong. And this is one of the deck that it's definitely gonna have to be prepared for. You know, through Ash and Bell and all that good stuff. But it's definitely something that we're gonna be seeing a lot of. Lastly, to no one's surprise, the balance did not kill Kashtira at all. Kashtira is still very strong, usually taking a huge percentage of top cut appearances. I believe at the SAWCQ, top 4 out of 4 players in top 4, 3 out of 4 of them were Kashtira players. Not a surprise. Even at the Remoto YCS, Kashtira represented a huge majority of top cut appearances. I think the most top cut appearances. As well as actually making it to all the way to top 4. So the deck is just still very good, still being very much played, and Shifter and a Rise Art, to no one's surprise, is still holding down the meta. So next we're going to talk about tier 2. I think tier 2s are decks that are like very powerful, and I think with the right pilot can definitely win a tournament. And we'll start off with Monstrous. I think Monstrous, if you guys have been watching DB Grinder and his DB replays, you might have seen this deck kind of pick up a little bit more, and more people are playing it, playtesting it a little bit, playing it in Ironmans and all the good stuff. Shout out to the Grinder. And Monstrous, from what I've seen through the DB replays and a little bit of testing myself, is a very strong deck, and the fact that it can nuke your entire board with Zelantis is kind of crazy. Zelantis is an absurd card combined in the Monstrous strategy, and if you don't know, the synergy there is that Zelantis can basically banish all the monsters on the field and try to summon them back, but because you're waterlocked, your opponent doesn't get to bring back any of their monsters. So that is actually insane, and you can do it. You can summon Zelantis and nuke your opponent's board while having Zelantis be unaffected by using Crystal Heart and the field spell. The deck has a lot of resources, gains a bunch of advantage, and is a very good grind game mid-range deck. You'll see that a lot of the tier 2 decks are like very powerful mid-range strategies. The next deck is Flu Wanderees. I think Flu has just got second place at the SCWCQ, a bunch of tops at the Remoto YCS. Flu is still a very good deck. I believe it has such a strong Kashtira matchup, which makes it a really decent meta call. The fact that it can play Shifter, can shut down the Runic strategy, is also kind of nice. I think the only thing with that deck is that it has some consistency issues, but the deck is still very powerful. Without like what do you call it? The deck is still very powerful, to be honest. And I still think like it's one of those decks that you definitely have to prep for. You know, for sure. Math Mech. Okay, Math Mech is, to no one's surprise, still very strong. And I'm talking about all versions of the Math Mech when I talk about Math Mech here. Circular is still one hell of a card. Even though it's at 1, there's like literally infinite ways to search it. If you play the Super Heavy engine, you can also play the Spirit engine. You have Silent Mining, Small World. It's just a very absurd card in my opinion. And Super Factorio is still catching bodies. A Math Mech deck, even though it utilizes I think Ignister cards, recently got second at the Remoto YCS. And yeah, he was just clapping people. Like, the deck has room for a lot of non-engine slots. It has easy ass OTK lines. You die to when your opponent put 2 Cyber Monsters on the board, you're just like dead. And they recently got a new Link 1 Link Decode Talker in the Battle of Legends set. So deck is definitely not something you should sleep on. I think it's a very strong contender. It might not have the highest representation compared to the tier 1 meta, but I do think that it will still be very much seen at like the YCS level for sure. Next, Bestial Dragon Link. This deck was, I think, the 3rd most topped deck at the Remoto YCS. A bunch of pretty known players were playing Bestial Dragon Link, and I think it's mainly because of Assault Synchron. People are trying out stuff with like, Assault Synchron, Ringo Worm. People are trying stuff out with the fact Triple Rebellion. Bistils are really good into the Live Turn Runic Sprite deck. It has Bestial Dissipator is kind of crazy. Regain is really powerful for the grind game. So a lot of people haven't played the Dragon Link deck. So I do think that deck is pretty solid. Riga Sun Avalon, to no one's surprise, We saw German Nationals. I think Josh got clapped by this deck. Literally, the deck has a decent amount of room for non-engine. People still don't really know what this deck does, so it has an advantage inherently just off of that alone. But the deck is honestly being played a lot. Like, even at German Nats, like, I think 3 or 4 people topped with this deck. One of them made it really far, deep into top cut. And Rika's Sun Avalon is actually just so strong. When he goes first, the board is nearly unbreakable. It doesn't lose to board breakers. That's like the main advantage of the Rika Sun Avalon deck, that the fact that it doesn't lose to Dark Ruler as much as other decks do in the format. Because you have like Rika Concon up with like the Rika Sheet. You also have Rika Princess in the graveyard to be able to tribute your opponent's cards for cost and negate their stuff. Very strong. Then you have like the Melfi Sprite deck. Melfi Sprite, Melfi Adventure Sprite, Melfi Sprite, or like the Adventure version is both very good. I believe the Adventure Sprite Melfi deck actually got qualified through Worlds. So very good deck. I think the reason why the deck is so good is because it makes the same board literally every single time, and all it takes is like 2 level 2s. Like every single time, it always makes the board. And all it takes is 2 level 2s, a bunch of non-engine slots, and it's just consistent at doing what it does every single time. So I do think that deck is very solid. It's like a strong contender. Like the board it makes is not like free. If you don't draw a Dark Ruler, it's gonna be very hard for you to crack the board for sure. But yeah. Pearly, I think, is still tier 2. I think the deck is just very difficult to play for most people, but I believe it just got top 4 at the last North American Remote YCS. The deck has like literally 20 non-engine slots, so while being very consistent in its engine still, and it has easy access to Zeus. It can break most boards going second. It struggles a lot going first now because of like the hits of Delicious, but I still think the deck is very strong. It got a huge buff because of the latest Battle of Legends set. And you might ask me how. Well, Sky Striker Azalea is a very strong Link 2 that got printed for this deck. Because of the fact that now you don't lose to Tikabu as hard as before. So what you can do is you can summon like the Pearly. Use the black cat. Use the black cat to grab like my friend, make a anima, and then special summon a yellow cat, hit another card, and then you can make Sky Striker Azalea, and Sky Striker Azalea can pop Tikabu. And this is all under like there can only be one. So Sky Striker Azalea is a very strong card that just got printed for the deck, helping it out more stuff. So I think that's a nice little buff there. So I do think the deck is like very good. And I think that it can be a very decent option as well. Just a very strong deck overall. The next little deck on my list is Mana Dome. I think Mana Dome is actually insane, and the reason why I say that is because like it can combo into Shifter. Surprisingly, like I like didn't realize this, but I was playing against like a Mana Dome player on DB ladder, and like this guy, like when I shifted him, was like apparently like all the Mana Dome monsters like Meek, like if they're popped and they go to the banish pile, it does not matter. They still trigger to summon another Meek from the deck, which is kind of cool. I was genuinely surprised. The guy put up Bistil, Dispater, and a Barone through my shifter. I was literally confused. I was like, this guy put up 2 interruptions, and I actually lost because of that. So, but the deck, when it pops off, actually makes a board that's really hard to push through because of the fact that it has access to the counter trap. So it's a combo deck that doesn't lose to Dark Ruler no more on its end board. And I think that's a huge advantage. I think that's actually like a main reason, or a reason to maybe consider playing the deck. Yeah, like I think the fact that it has the ability to end on the counter trap, you know, end on the full board with like Chen Ying, big boss monsters. I think even going second, the deck excels because it can make like Ashroud that's not once per turn that popping on your opponent's cards. The deck can make like Chaos Angel with Ashroud. You can like make what do you call it? You can like use like like it's just so crazy. Going second, this deck also can just like demolish your board. So I think this deck is really cool as well. And I think like it might not. The thing that the only thing it has going for it is the fact that it doesn't have as many non-engine slots. But I think that's kind of okay because you just play the most impactful one, right? Next, Vanquish Soul. Oh, sorry, Despia. Okay, Despia. I think the thing with Despia is that everyone's trying to puppet lock people, but I think like if you just play branded Despia, you like even if you don't puppet lock your opponent, because the board is so sticky. The board is so many interruptions when you don't puppet lock your opponent. I think the deck in general, just playing normal without trying to puppet lock is so good still. Like, cause you like playing through multiple Mirror Jades. Quem can bring back a Mirror Jade too. People like forget that. It's such like a very, very strong deck. I think like it has ways to play through Ash on Brand Diffusion. But yeah, I think the deck overall is still very powerful if it goes off. So I think it's one of those decks that you kind of like have to like watch out for and prepare for. So next is gonna be the Vanquish Soul deck. Vanquish Soul is, I think the reason why I put it in the tier 2 list is because it keeps winning. Like literally, if you guys have been looking at the data for all the regionals, all the nationals, all these are remote events, all like the SCWCQ, it just keeps topping. Like people just keep topping with this deck, and I didn't understand it at first, so I took it to locals, right? If you guys haven't watched my locals videos yet, you should go check it out. But I started playing it, and I finally understood this deck just generates so much card advantage. Like when it goes first, it kind of plays like Prank Kid, where it makes the bare minimum to like survive, and then like on the crackback, the turn 3, it just has like 10 cards, like 7, 8, 9 cards in hand, and it just recracks all of your board, like all the stuff you put up to break it. Just reverse cracks it, and it generates like infinite card advantage. Book of Moon is like very strong against Kashtira, against like any runic deck. Booking a Moon Hugin in the EMZ is very powerful. So having that as utility, non-engine in-engine disruption is very good for the strategy. Also, the deck can function on the shifter, which makes it have Kashtira go -1 whenever they shifter it. So as a result, like the Vanquish Soul is actually well positioned in the meta, surprisingly enough, right? I think that's really, really good. Next we have tier limit, the tier limit strategy. I think tier is actually very, very strong as well right now. I think when you don't play against Cash, you just kind of like beat every other deck and power through everything they can put out. I saw Shunping top the Philly regional, and as well as the North American remote duel with his tier limit strategy. And so yeah, I think tier is still a very strong deck. I think maybe that has like some weaknesses against like the Dragon Link deck, right? But I think it's still like very solid overall, and it has a really good Fur Hire match, or no, Runic Sprite matchup, or any the Fur Hire deck. The fact that it has Shufflers makes it so that you can answer the Runic decks kind of nicely. Next, I have Swordsman tier 2, and this might seem kind of biased, but the reason I'll explain my reasoning for why I think it's a strong contender, but they might not have the highest representation. It's because Sword Soul is, I think, pretty well positioned against Labyrinth and Runic decks. Vishuddha is one hell of a card into both Labyrinth and Runics. Okay? Like, Vishuddha is like an absurd card at beating Runic Fountain. And I think that, like, in the end board with, like, the black is very, very good. So, like, you have a good advantage against Labyrinth when you just, like, literally set blackout and stuff like that. And then also against Kashtira, yeah, Shifter kind of hurts it, but it doesn't necessarily make it so that the deck can't not function. I think that's like the main thing about the Sword Soul. Yeah, I think D-Barrier I think if Labyrinth get access to the D-Barrier combo, they can like cook you. But most people play only one D-Barrier. And so like if you open like any of your hand traps or quick plays, you can kind of stop them from setting barrier and using it. Definitely not the most overtuned deck, but it's just like balanced deck overall. So then tier 3 are basically like rogue decks. I think if the deck is well piloted enough, I still think it can catch a lot of dubs. Okay, like a prime example of that is actually like Exorcister. I believe Stevenson totally just won the remote to YCS with Exorcister, and yeah, and I think that the decks might be rogue. They might not be, I think, my strongest pick for the metagame, but that I do think that Exorcister, like I said, with the right pilot, tier 3 decks can be very, very good, you know? So, let's start out with Exo. Exorcister, with the inclusion of the Spirit Engine, makes it a little bit more consistent. But the reason why I put it in stuff like tier 3, because it has a lot of fundamental weakness, right? Where, like, if you Kaiju, they're big XYZ. If you Lightning Storm their back row, you nib them. Like, it's just very, very difficult, especially because a lot of these cards are being played right now. But I think with the right pilot, the deck can still do very good. It might be a good rogue option to catch people off guard. I put Daitron in that same ceiling because Jorl's kind of in the format again. Bystials are being played by the Dragon Link deck, and there's being played by a lot of deck. Bell's being played. Kind of makes it like not only a rogue deck, but also not well positioned in the metagame. So I kind of have it here. Same thing for the Dark World deck. Definitely the Dark World deck, if it pops off, can hand loop you, can definitely catch dubs. 100%. No arguing there. But with Bystials, Bell, Ash, all those cards in the metagame, I think this deck draw definitely makes it a lot harder for this deck to function inherently. But the deck is still very powerful, obviously. If it goes first uninterrupted, basically hand loops you. But sometimes the deck doesn't always consistently do the combo too. Like, literally, I've seen Dark World brick uninterrupted as well, surprisingly. I have Dragon Slayer here for the same reason as all like the other rogue combo decks as Zytron, so I won't really explain too much on it. I think Plunder is one of those decks that can definitely catch bodies for sure. Like, I think this deck can definitely cook. Whether you play the Runic version, the Rite of Our Major version, or anything along those lines. I definitely think the Plunder deck can cook, but you need to be very skilled with Plunder. Like, very, very skilled, because the deck requires you to really understand how to maneuver and use all of its cards for you to do well with it, in my opinion. So if you're a skilled Plunder duelist, I do think you can do really well with it. I'm just putting it at tier 3 because I don't think the average person, representation-wise, playing this deck is really good with it. But I think if you feel like you can cook with it, I do think it can maybe even go into tier 2. Like, it's really, really good deck, in my opinion. It just needs a really good pilot, I think, to compensate for the weakness in its deck. I think the mechanical deck is a cool strategy that I think will catch dubs just because people don't know what it does. It's basically like how do you explain this deck? It literally tries to int, like it's a suicide deck. Like, it tries to suicide into you, make you take all the damage and stuff like that. But I think honestly, the mechanical deck, once people figure out how to work against it, is not that good. But it can definitely catch bodies if you don't understand how it works. I mean, it makes sense what it does. Literally, like, it's basically, yeah, Scion inting strat. Yeah, it's literally an inting strategy. Like, you try to int, like, try to crash your bodies, make your opponent take all the damage. It's like, sure, it's kind of cringe, but, you know, definitely can catch people off guard if they have no idea what to expect there. So, I have seen it. I've played against it. I do think that it has some potential to catch the bot, like, catch people, you know, so. Yeah, it's definitely the Baus deck, you know? Next, we have Gold Pride Punk. I think the end board of Gold Pride Punk uninterrupted is basically FTK. You're basically going to win. But I put it in, like, the rogue combo deck. I don't even consider it mid-range because, honestly, your board when you go first with Gold Pride Punk is basically unlosable, in my opinion. The board is so crazy. I just think that, like, it plays a lot of engine cards. And as a result, like, you don't really have enough room for non-engine. And going second, Punk cards are not that strong at breaking boards. Same with Gold Pride. Like, I think my only reason why I don't like the deck is because going second, its engine is not powerful enough to break boards. Like, I'll give you an example. When the tier 2 decks go second, such as Monstrous engine going second is very good. Like, you can literally make, like, Zelantis, right? Fulanderies tributes all your cards with the spell. Mathbank makes access code, breaks your board. You know, you make Borderland, attacks all your opponent's monsters. Recascend Avalon, tributes all yourself. These are all in-engine ways that their deck breaks board. Pearly makes Zeus. Manadome makes Astroud. Brandage just makes Mirror Jade. Banish all your stuff. Chimera. You know what I'm saying? The Punk cards, engine-wise, going second, not as good, in my opinion. You know, Ziamin, very weak normal summon. Those are my thoughts on the deck. I still think the deck is very good when you go first with it. I do think, like, you can definitely cook with it. I just find it going second a little bit rough on the edges, but, you know, not bad. Sky Striker, you know, I think you need to be nice to cook with this deck, in my opinion. But it's a rogue deck. I think it's a deck that I think you'll probably, you know, some people will make the top cut with it, but once you get to top cut, it's a really bad deck, in my opinion. People just, you know, make you start. They're like, yeah, you can go first. You know, it's just a really rough deck in top cut. But I think in Swiss, I think this deck can break like pretty much any board. So it has that going for it. It's like really good at going second. It has the opposite of the punk cards. The deck is crazy at going second. It'll break all your boards. Thrust is amazing for the deck. Search is engaged. Like, you're literally resolving engage like 3 times. Like, burning all your opponent's cards. Like, they're on nothing. But, you know, when you go first, you might pack your cards up. That's all I'm saying. Dinos is like in the same category as all the rogue combo decks. Definitely can catch people off guard when you go first with it. But I think with the main deck, Dark Ruler, definitely a weak deck in my opinion. So I really don't like it. And also I haven't seen a really good optimized combo version of Dinos yet, so hopefully I get to see something along those lines. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, but I haven't seen a really good combo for the deck yet, in my opinion. So maybe someone can like share it, but I haven't seen anything like that yet. Super heavy Pier is not good in my opinion, but I think with combined as an engine might be kind of nice, so I just put it here. Satellarknight, turn 1, if it resolves this combo, can turn skip you. Not bad. Going second as Zeus Axe says. Rogue deck, not as powerful. Might catch some dubs. And then you have Trap Tricks. Obviously, strong mid-range deck. Not the most amazing deck going second because it has traps in it. But I still think the deck can definitely catch bodies. Strong matchups against like Kashtira. I actually lost to Trap Trick at the Toronto Regional. Very strong deck, like I said. Can definitely catch people off guard if you're not familiar with what the cards are doing. Sarah is an insane card. I've seen like super heavy Trap Tricks as well. That deck's been cooking. I've seen what it ends on. Not bad. Just has the issue with the Trap Trick deck. It has a fundamental weakness to the tier 1 deck. Like, Trap Tricks literally cannot beat Runic. Like, it's impossible. It's an unwinnable matchup. I think you literally cannot beat the Runic cards. It's too broken. Pop your Sarah. You know what I'm saying? Pop Rafflesia. Destruction of back row. Like, you're just like down infinite cards. They draw 2. It's just really tough, right? Pure Scareclaw, I think put it in tier 3 category. Can catch dubs for sure. You know, Tryhard is very powerful boss monster. And then also they have a lot of in-engine like negates that are random. Like they have a trap that's a Omni negate. So I do think the deck with Tryhard can be kind of nice. Depending on the matchup, Tryhard can basically solo a free win for you. Like against Branded, you just Tryhard them. They're kind of down bad. So I do think it's kind of nice. Not bad. I put like what is this? Tri Brigade Sprite in tier 3. Because I think Runic cards are just better in my opinion than Tri Brigade cards. And then I have Pure Runic Sprite or Pure Runic Live Twin. Pure Sprite Live Twin. Sorry, Pure Sprite Runic in here. As tier 3 because I think that you need another engine than just blue for it to be good, in my opinion. Like I think you need another supplementary engine to make it so that you have a very strong grind game. Because once you exhaust like the Sprite engine turn 1 and you don't have a supplementary engine, you don't really do anything. The reason why the Live Twin cards and the Ferrari cards are so good is because they're turn 3. There's a lot of things you can do without battle phases, right? So, yeah, there's that. The last tier is a Cancel Your Flood Tournament. It's kind of a meme. I just don't think these decks are really that good at all. There's just better versions of this deck that exist. Like, for example, Golden Lord, just play Labyrinth, you know. The Neteria deck got nuked, got murdered. Just sad days, man. Like, they hit the trap to 1. Salamangreat, you know, it's just, bro, it's 2023, fam. You know, 2023. Like, Mathmag is just better Salamangreat, okay? You have Novellas, Cancel Your Flight, Femo. Like, it's not a deck that's that good. Tri Brigade, Leerless, the Sprite version is just better, you know? Yeah, it's just better. And Virtual World, yeah, this one's for Nesh. Like, do not play Virtual World. It's just unfortunate, yeah. It's just unfortunate. So, that's going to be the tier list, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let me know what deck you've been testing for the new format. And what your thoughts are on the new post-ban list, post-Battle of Legends tier list. So, I will see you guys in the next one. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. Don't forget to subscribe. Grab your merch. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.